Farm Week is a production of the Mississippi State University Extension Service.
Today on Farm Week, Mississippi State University receives a $50,000 gift to support its rice research in the Delta.
In southern gardening, the hot days of August test most southern plants to their limits. Gary Bachman will have suggestions for varieties that could stand up to the dog days of summer.
In the markets this week, analysts anticipate a change in grain supplies in the August 12th supply and demand report. While the nation's beef cow herd may still be shrinking, but only slightly.
In the feature segment, the average age of the nation's farmers continues to creep upward. Modern machinery allows farmers to work longer, but most farms still don't have a plan on how it will be passed to the next generation.
Over half of aging farmers don't have a will or an estate plan, and I think it reflects what you and I are discussing, and that is perhaps a denial of the fact that somebody's got to take over and I need to have a plan for that.
Good day, everyone. I'm Leighton Spann.
And I'm Artis Ford. Welcome to Farm Week. Farmland values rose in many areas of the country last year.
Artis, the value of farm real estate rose as a whole, according to the latest survey by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. While the overall average was up, some areas saw wild increases, while others saw decreases. The value of U.S. farm real estate averaged $2,900 per acre. That's up 9.4% from last year. This represents the value of all land and buildings. Now, looking strictly at cropland values, New Jersey came in first, $12,800 per acre, up 4% from last year. California is number 2. Its cropland value is more than $10,000 per acre, up 4% from 2012. Arizona came in third, $9,000 per acre, up 6% from last year. Iowa came in fourth with an average cropland value of $8,600. That's up 18% from 2012. Now here in Mississippi, the value of all farms and buildings was unchanged from 2012 at an average of $2,140 per acre. Mississippi cropland did increase in value, an average of $2,300 per acre, up 11% from last year. The value of Mississippi's irrigated cropland was placed at $2,600 per acre, up 12%. Mississippi pasture land value is placed at almost $2,000. That's up 1% from 2012. 7 states, Connecticut, Florida, New Hampshire, New Mexico, New York, Rhode Island, and South Carolina saw the value drop of their farmland and buildings.
Mississippi State University's rice research program is $50,000 bigger after a much-needed donation. It was made last week at the annual Rice and Field Day held at MSU's Delta Research and Extension Center at Stoneville. Mike McCann with Mars Incorporated presented the donation last week to Dr. Tim Walker, leader of the MSU Rice team. Uncle Ben's is a Mars food brand and has operated a rice mill at Greenville, Mississippi since 1976. The funds will support Mississippi State's rice variety breeding program and its work in growing rice sustainably.
We've gone on and Mississippi State has been kind enough to allow us to make suggestions into their variety development programs, and they've listened to our suggestions, provided cultivars for us to analyze and test in our plant. And even all the way up to, the latest is some collaboration on some sustainability projects that we have going on.
Andy Morris, a rice buyer for Mars Incorporated, said it would like to see fewer rice varieties grown in the Mid-South. This allows them as a buyer to produce a more consistent quality product.
As most everybody knows, I think long grain rice, as an example, in California, there's one variety predominantly grown. I think there's close to 27 in the South. So I think we have some opportunities we can improve on there.
Later, Rice Field Day participants received an update on some of Mississippi State's research, much of it in parts funded by farmers through their Mississippi Rice Promotion Board. Rainy weather in the spring delayed planting, putting the crop 2 to 3 weeks behind schedule. Moderate temperatures in July have helped the rice crop to make up lost time.
The weather since May has really cooperated extremely well. We've had very moderate temperatures, good sunlight. So, you know, if we can maintain this pattern through the month of August and have good harvest conditions, I think we have the makings for a really good crop.
Well, let's check now on the Mississippi Weekly Crop Report from the Mississippi Ag Statistics Service in Jackson. This report reflects conditions as of last Sunday, August 4th. As we look at topsoil moisture, it's adequate to surplus in about 2/3 of the state, but it's in about 1/3 of the state it's short to very short. In terms of maturity, 13% of the corn crop is mature, far behind the 41% 5-year average for the state. Cotton, 66% setting bolls, 93% is the average. Rice, 53% setting bolls as of Sunday, 76% is the average. Soy, 49% setting pods, 91% is the average. Well, there are still good choices for summer color as our temperatures heat up. In this week's Southern Gardening segment, Extension horticulturist Dr. Gary Bachman shows us some bedding plants that can keep flashing color all the way through the dog days of August.
The dog days of August are often tough on summer color, but there are still some bedding plant options that provide a colorful pop even in the most oppressive summer heat. Today we're looking at a large mailbox garden that shows out with a lot of color. The first thing you notice about this bed is the height of the plantings. The tall, wispy seed heads of the purple fountain grass give the whole bed a natural look, along with the mixed wave petunias flowing freely over the sides of the whiskey barrel planter. Tall flowers are also growing in abundance with plenty of coneflowers and rudbeckia. This bed actually features 3 different varieties of rudbeckia, including Irish Eyes, which has a bright green center cone, the extra colorful Cherokee Sunset with the rustic red and orange petals surrounding the chocolate brown cone, and Tiger-Eyed Gold, which are yellow with a brown button center. There's even some diversity with the coneflowers, with the purple bravado and the white swan having white petals. Closer to ground level is where the long-lasting color survives. These gorgeous Inca marigolds with their yellow and orange pom-pom-like flowers continue to pop right through the summer heat. New Look celosia with its bright red plumes and burgundy foliage also gives summer-long color. A tough new flowering favorite of mine is purslane. This yellow pizzazz and tangerine pizzazz have a spreading habit, providing a carpet of drought-resistant color. In the deep south, we may wilt during the hot dog days of August, but that doesn't mean our flower beds have to. I'm horticulturist Gary Bachman for Southern Gardening.
Leighton Gary says mulching and weeding can help keep your available soil moisture directed towards your dog day performers. Well, in the feature segment today, the average age of farmers is getting older in the United States. That's not necessarily bad, but older farmers shouldn't delay thinking about how to pass on their farms to the next generation. Time now for the markets with Leighton. And Leighton, the August crop production report coming out shortly.
Very shortly, Monday, August 12th at midday, we'll discuss what those numbers may have to say about corn. Also ahead in the markets this week, long-term demand appears to be positive for wheat. The nation's cow herd is estimated to be down a little further as Russia bans chicken imports from one Mississippi plant. Analysts are waiting for the crop and supply demand numbers that will be released at midday on Monday the 12th. Thursday morning at production time, corn and soybeans were described as trading surprisingly higher by some analysts given the positioning that normally precedes a monthly report. I discussed the grain and oilseed sector with Extension economist Brian Williams. Brian, corn prices have been in a downtrend so far. What's going on there right now?
They have been, and there's several things that are kind of playing into the mix. The big things, number one, we've got a USDA report coming up on Monday, and it looks like we're going to have a lot bigger crop than last year, and they're expected to revise that upward again. Another thing we're seeing is, with harvest quickly approaching, we're seeing a lot of producers emptying out the grain bin and just putting a lot more grain on the market. And then the third thing is, here in the southeast, the corn crop's really getting close to maturity, and they're expecting harvest to start rolling in and putting additional grain on the market soon.
Is this market oversold right now, would you say?
Maybe to a certain extent. It's really not surprising me what we're seeing, given all the information that we have coming into the market, though.
Mm-hmm. And at this point, really, compared to a year ago, especially, weather is not really a threat, or there's nothing we know of right now that could impact weather-wise.
Right, and I think much of the country, what we're seeing is the corn's getting closer to maturity, and so the weather's not going to have as big of an impact at this point. And the impact that it does have, I think, is going to be a lot more quality-based than quantity-based.
And how is demand like for old crop corn? How's that running?
Well, with the corn prices coming down, both in new crop and old crop, I think we're seeing the demand be boosted a little bit. Margins are looking good for the ethanol producers, and then cattle feeders are really liking these lower prices as well.
Now, on the soybean side, in some parts of the country, it seems the crop is behind a little bit.
Yes, it is. As a country, we're at about 39% of our soybean crops have set pods. That's compared to a normal of about 51%. Here in Mississippi, we're even further behind. We're at 49% setting pods, and we should normally be around 91%.
Yet prices have kind of been trending down as well on beans.
They have been. We've seen a bit of a recovery today. On today, Thursday, they've come up a little bit, but we are at a low point in the last several months.
Staying with the grains as we continue, long-term demand is said to be supportive for the wheat market right now. Analyst Jamie Kohaki says if he was going to pick one grain to get long on, it would be wheat based off of demand.
The wild card is going to be the U.S. dollar. You saw an uptick there midweek. I don't think the dollar hangs on long term, but it is something to watch out for. But I do like buying wheat on breaks.
August is National Catfish Month, and we have a catfish-related trivia quiz for you. And here's the question: how many farm-raised catfish operations are there in the United States? 219, 399, 536, or 624? I'll tell you the answer at the end of the markets.
We're going to pause for a short break on Farm Week. Coming up, we'll look at the calendar. Leighton Spann reports that pork demand is up while the nation's cattle herd is declining in numbers. In the feature segment today, it's no secret that the nation's farmers are growing older. That's not all bad, but it takes planning to make sure a farm can continue with the next generation.
Mississippi 4-H celebrates a rich history of youth development through creative hands-on experiences. Programs emphasize leadership, technology, science, and agriculture.
But it's a lot more than that. Making the best better.
Before we get back to the markets, let's look at the Farm Week calendar. Want to start a natural resource enterprise business on your land? Be sure to attend the workshop to be held Thursday, August 15th in Belzona. It will be at the Belzona Multi-Purpose Center. The registration fee is $25 per person or $30 per couple. Land management topics such as managing wildlife, recreational businesses, and reducing liability will be covered. As always, registration information will be on our Farm Week website calendar. 2 Mississippi meetings of the Cattlemen's College take place in late August. Among many items, low-stress beef cattle handling will be demonstrated. The first will be August 28th at the Kane Cattle Company at Pickens and August 29th at JRW Farms at Seminary. There's no charge to attend. Call the Mississippi Cattlemen's Association to register for lunch. Go to our Farm Week website at farmweek.msucares.com for information on these and other events. Now check out this week's Farm Week Snapshot.
The National Pork Board claims the most recent monthly cold storage report confirms pork demand nationwide is up. The USDA numbers indicate that frozen pork supplies dropped 14% from May to June. Year over year, pork inventories in our nation's coolers were down 5%. Meanwhile, frozen beef stocks were larger than some analysts anticipated, basically unchanged from May, but up 3% from 1 year ago. And as for chicken in cold storage, the government says stocks as of June were down 2% from the month before. But compared to 1 year ago, inventories of chicken were actually up 2%. The USDA canceled its mid-year cattle inventory report for 2013, but there is word of one gauge of where we may be in the beef sector right now as far as inventory. Brownfield Ag News reports this week a group of cattle market analysts, the Technical Advisory Committee of the Livestock Marketing Information Center, now estimates the beef cow herd in the U.S. is likely down another 1 to 2% as of July 1st. Thursday morning at production time, lean hogs were 32 to 72 cents higher after some triple-digit losses in a few hog contracts on Wednesday. Analyst Elaine Cubb says it's her opinion the pork sector has passed its price peak for now.
I think that it's not going to be able to make it back over its peak from June, right before the 4th of July. I think that was probably the peak we've seen. With the bacon season that we would ordinarily be looking at coming into right about now is probably also going to be late this year. I mean, all of this is sort of determined by weather again. So I think that might also be late, and I think that the processors are looking at a very large cold storage number or supply number right now. So I don't think that they're going to have the excitement to bid that back up above 87.
The Russian Federation announced on Tuesday of this week it will suspend imports of chicken from a Sanderson Farms facility in Mississippi. According to the USDA's Food Safety and Inspection Service, Sanderson's plant in Collins is the one affected by this suspension. Thursday, August 8th was the last day poultry from the Collins plant could be loaded on a ship for export to the Russian Federation. Before the feature story, let's check the trivia answer for this week. And the correct choice is D. As of January, there were 624 farm-raised catfish operations in the U.S. That is a drop of 13% from 1 year ago.
In our feature segment today, the nation's farmers growing older. Now that's not a surprise, but it is somewhat sobering. The 2007 Census of Agriculture says that the average U.S. farmer is 57 years old, and the number of growers 75 or older grew by 20% in the most recent survey. Modern mechanization allows farmers to work longer. By some estimates, though, more than half of America's farmland will change hands during the next 20 years. Harvest Public Media's Grant Gerlach says that even though many farmers and ranchers are well beyond typical retirement age, many are in no hurry to quit.
The farm was first purchased by my great-grandfather. He farmed it, his son farmed it after him, then my dad, then me. I'm kind of the last guy on the chain.
Bob Hawthorne farms 2,000 acres of corn and soybeans in the Luss Hills of western Iowa. He's been doing it 60 years, and at the age of 84, he has no plans to slow down. It runs in the family. His father, Fred Hawthorne, stayed active on the farm into his 90s and lived to be 98, so Bob feels like he's still got plenty of time left to work.
I'd be bored not having anything to do. Now, I've also noticed that farmers, when they retire, buy a house in town, move into town, they die of a heart attack about the next year. Seems like farmers have to keep going active or they just fade away.
Hawthorne is part of a growing group of farmers. In fact, farmers over 65 years old have been the fastest growing group of farmers in the country. Working beyond retirement is a national trend. In 2012, 5% of the U.S. workforce was old enough to retire, but a quarter of all farm operators were over 65. When it comes down to it, it's just easier for farmers to work longer.
It's not quite as backbreaking a task as it used to be. Well, it isn't. It's more you use your mind rather than your back, so you can go longer.
And while the average price for 2013 is yet to be determined, farming is more lucrative now than just about any time since Bob Hawthorne came back to the farm in 1955. But in surveys of Iowa farmers, Mike Duffy has learned regardless of the money or new technology, some farmers will just never quit.
Farmers are farmers, and that's who they are, and that's who they identify themselves as, and so they don't, that's like retiring from who you are. They'll leave horizontal, and that's just, that's who farmers are.
I think what keeps older farmers going is the fear that if I don't keep going, there's nothing left for me to make me feel like I'm contributing and am a valuable person. That keeps a lot of farmers continuing, even perhaps when their bodies say we should quit this.
Psychologist Mike Roseman calls it the agrarian imperative. It's something he knows personally as a retired farmer himself. It's the kind of determination to keep farming that causes Bob Hawthorne to push back when neighbors ask about retirement.
They keep bugging me and say, "Oh, when are you going to quit?" I think I'd tell them I won't quit farming until all hell freezes over, or something like that.
But even as farmers take the long view on their careers, there may be some things they don't see coming.
We know the incidences of injuries and occupation-related illnesses is higher for agriculture than almost any other occupation. Aging farmers are losing their friends. Sometimes they're losing health, and they're more prone to depression and even in some cases suicide, from what we know from the data.
Decide if that's where they want to go. And
Access to care is a problem in many rural areas. The Nebraska Rural Response Hotline has been helping farmers and their families find counseling since the farm crisis of the 1980s. But many don't get the help they need. Studies have found the risk of suicide is 60% higher for farmers than the rest of the population. Studies also show a surprising number of farmers work late into their careers without a plan for how it will eventually end.
Over half of aging farmers don't have a will or an estate plan, and I think it reflects what you and I are discussing, and that is perhaps a denial of the fact that somebody's got to take over and I need to have a plan for that.
The plans older farmers make have larger implications because more often than not, they own the land they're working. That means farmers like Bob Hawthorne hold a big piece to the future of farming. Mike Duffy describes the trend in Iowa.
In the early 80s, about 10%, 12% of the land was owned by people over 75.
Now, nearly a third of Iowa farmland belongs to people over 75. But those landowners know their neighbors are watching and waiting.
Where you see tensions is in communities, people trying to bid for land and outbid each other, and going to retirement homes and going to funerals and asking widows if, offering to rent their land, and, all kinds of nonsense like that. To some extent, it's competition among businesses, but to some extent, it's very cutthroat and it leaves bad feelings.
Bob Hawthorne does wonder what will happen to his family's farm. He knows one thing. After 4 generations, the Hawthorne family farm ends here. He has no children of his own. He never married. What will happen? It's a big question, and not one he seems ready to answer. Not just yet.
We aren't short of young people that want to farm. We're short of old people that want to move over.
And when I look overhead, I see a lot of vultures circling and descending on me. They can't wait until I retire, I die, or become physically or mentally incompetent to run the farm. so they get the greedy hands on my farmland. Every farm wants to grab more land because it's not big enough. I never heard of any farm that wants to sell some land because it's got too much.
For Market to Market, I'm Grant Gerlach.
And you can watch this story again on U.S. Farmers Growing Older on our Farm Week website. That's farmweek.msucares.com. You can also watch Farm Week stories on YouTube and our Facebook page. We encourage you to get on board and like us. We also have a link to the Market to Market website where you can see the story as well as read the script. Well, now, Leighton, one of the things to think about is the fact that, like, with the, as we saw earlier in the show in the news segment, with prices getting so high in the Midwest, people, they just start losing kind of reason, and man, they're going up to widows at funeral homes and stuff wanting to buy the land, and so it does create some hard feelings. I mean, obviously people have been approaching him.
All right.
Well, we are at the end of Farm Week for this week. On our next show, meet the man who changed tractors forever.
On our next edition of Farm Week, you may not know Harold Brock, but he worked for Henry Ford. He developed the tractors, which turned tractors into tools no farmer could do without.
In Southern Gardening, color pockets. When the hot days of August hit, try to concentrate your effort on smaller areas. For the rest of the Farm Week crew, I'm Artis Ford.
And I'm Leighton Spann. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.